for the oral assessment, I always like to tell the students take the written assessment first, and then I can review it and go over at the oral assessment the things that maybe they didn't get very well, and I can talk about that, and I can assess them as part of the oral performance. So here I'm going to show you a set of videos, and I'm going to explain a little bit of the background, what we were doing for each of these activities. So the first video is the Spanish fundamental class. And we started in a synchronous activity where the students had to study the different parts of the house and the furniture that they can find in the house. They had to watch videos, and they also had to contrast and compare with their own house. During the online session, which you're going to see, the students work in breakout groups, and one student had to describe their dream house, while the other student had to draw it. So here the other student had to pay attention and be listening and interpret what the student was communicating to them, and then share that with the class.
La habitación tiene un armario, una cama, dos mesitas y un escritorio.
La casa de Ana tiene un dormitorio, un baño, una cocina y un comedor.
Good. So you can see that one student preferred to use the notepad and draw the house, while the other student actually preferred to use paper and share with the class. So in the next video, you're going to see this intermediate Spanish class. And the activity started as an asynchronous activity. The students were studying vocabulary and grammar to talk about the different professions and what were the qualities a person needed for different jobs. So the students had to create a flyer in the area of their interest and act as a recruiter. So they had to recruit a person for a job position. During the online session, the students presented the flyer to the class and what they were looking for a candidate. And then the other students had to try to convince the interviewer why they were a good candidate, to finally to have the interviewer decide who was going to hire and why they were going to hire that person.
Si está interesado o tiene preguntas, por favor, llame mi número. Gracias.
Creo que no, estoy seguro de que yo tengo don de gentes. Estoy capaz de pensar rápidamente. Tengo un sentido del humor muy bien, creo. Y soy diligente con mi trabajo.
Creo que puedo hacer muy rápido y eficiente, porque cuando yo trato, sí puedo hacer muy rápido y eficiente.
Okay, Maggie.
Sí, los tres candidatos son muy buenos. Afortunadamente, Nate no tiene un don de Maggie yo contrato todos excepto Nate.
And this next class, this is the advanced Spanish class, the students worked in the cultural presentation. So the asynchronous activity was to do the research and prepare a written document with their findings and the PowerPoint. And during the online session, they were doing these presentations, another thing to assess their oral performance.
Visitar al volcán. Hay mucha naturaleza allí y un lago es más o menos grande. Si visitas al parque, recomiendo que camines por el volcán y en todos los caminos ahí.
Okay, so those are some of the examples of how the students can perform the activities and their oral skills in the online classroom. So in the next slide, we can see an example of, again, how an activity begins as an asynchronous activity and then develops into an synchronous activity. On the left side of the screen, we can see the storyboard that. So that's a great site. If you don't know about it, maybe you know and use it already. And you have up to 6 boards that you can use for free. And this is a fun site because the students can actually be creative and choose their characters and their background scenes and use a bubble where they can include dialogue. And this particular activity was part of the reading activity for one of the readers. The students have to read for class. It was a little short novel, and the students will read it, and we will meet during class and discuss the different chapter they had to read. At the end of the book, what they had to do was to create a storyboard where they have to choose the most important scenes of the story. And then during the online session, the students will share it. And it was nice to see and fun how a lot of students agree with what were the most important part of the story. Maybe for another student, something was more important than another part, or how they develop their characters, how they choose their clothing or the color of hair according to what they had to read before.
On right is a example of how I use VoiceThread for a speaking assessment item outside of class, but it's combined with something we do during the live session too, and it's combined with a writing assignment. So on VoiceThread, you can create, like you can upload an image and then record record something, like for example, you can set up the context, assign a role, and then say something in the recording. So this is a advertisement that student's role is that he or she is a study abroad student in Beijing University, and then on campus he or she sees an advertisement of apartment for lease. So in VoiceThread, he or she is supposed to record a voicemail and then call up. So during the live session, first of all, he saw the advertisement and called me up and asked details of the apartment. So this picture is not in live session, only in the, let me turn around and annotate. During live session, the information, only this advertisement was shown to the students. And then he will call me playing the role of the travel agent, and then asking how many rooms are there any furnitures, is it a kitchen, is there any appliances included, how much is the rent, how much is the deposit, is having pets allowed or not. After making that phone call, and you can see because I was playing the role of the travel agent, the landlord, he didn't get to use some of the text expressions. I was using my part of the speaking. Then after class in VoiceThread, he's supposed to call up a friend of his and ask if that friend is interested in renting an apartment together with him. Then he have to describe the apartment using in his speaking, and that's recorded in VoiceThread. And the VoiceThread will create a link. You can embed that in Blackboard. Let me clear my join. Okay, next, as you can see from the examples we have shown you so far, the instructor's role is not just the teacher. In the classroom context, our role as a teacher is default. But in terms of designing an oral assessment item, you are acting like first a script writer, come up with an authentic script, and then you are designing props and visual aids and think about how to, like, is this one going to be shown to the whole class by using screen share, or is this one just going to be text to the student so other students don't see what his visual aid is? So you're like a stage manager, and then you're also assigning roles and telling the student what the context, what's the scenario here today. So you're acting like a director. And then you are also, like you can see, I was doing the interaction with students, so I'm one of the performers too. And then you're also an audience watching students interacting with each other and giving feedback. So as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about oral assessment, we're not waiting until the end of the semester or in the middle of semester just to give a midterm or final exam. We're assessing our students all the time on different aspects. In terms of oral, whether the listening comprehension was good, does the student's speech sound authentic, the pronunciation accurate, and then was the delivery smooth with his interaction, and then is the student's speech structurally well formed, was he or she using the target expression that he learned from the class, so it has to evaluate their content too, or is that something appropriate in Spanish or Chinese context. So from different aspects, we give them feedback. This example right here, I'm going to use my annotate again. This example right here is notes I take while they're speaking in class. So you can see here some check marks on the left side where I'm keeping track how many, like if I'm calling on each student's each round of exercise. And then here's Q&A, meaning if the student get to ask question, then the student answer question. Next round, he or she will answer the question or ask a question. So they are rotating their turn to ask and answer questions, so they get to use all the target expressions. And then here's some notes I take down while they're speaking, whether they have a tone issue they need to correct, or it's they use English in their speaking, or it's something, it's grammatically correct but not working well with that context. And then I correct them right away when they're done with their round of speaking, so that they can, and I ask them to repeat so they can correct themselves and reinforce the correct information of how things should be pronounced or structured. And right here, I have example of how I give them notes when I give them grade, like what exactly you need to work on. And this is a grading on the oral performance, and this is a grading on a comprehensive quiz, which comes with a writing portion and a speaking portion. Writing, I grade them directly on paper, and then in speaking, I give them like details. So like when you give student your feedback, it's not just good job, well done, work on your tones, but give them more specific examples. So they can improve, and this is something I give them regularly every week. So then, you know, this make an error, which is okay. You correct yourself, you improve, and you're improving along the way the whole semester. Not like only get to know how you are doing in class by taking midterm or final exam, but by constantly being evaluated by the instructor. Also, earlier in the video, one student, I don't know if you noticed, but he said something wrong. He corrected himself. He said, take subway line 2 and for 3 stops. He said Shanzhan, and then he corrected himself, Sanzhan. So self-correction is highly encouraged too. And besides being corrected by me and correct themselves, I also encourage students correcting each other and giving each other feedback. If someone says something that I don't think is the right answer, instead of saying that's wrong right away, I would ask other students, what do you think? Is that correct? And everything done in Chinese, of course. So like there's peer learning, peer feedback going on there too. Let me clear my join. And then I want to point out, I've met people before who worry about correcting students in front of everyone, thinking that's hurting their self-esteem or hurting their feeling. But I point out at the very beginning of semester, when I correct you, do not feel embarrassed, because I will correct everyone. And I am not perfect as a learner of English, speaking English for years. I am not perfect in my English grammar too. So when I correct you, I'm not trying to put you on the spot to make you embarrassed. I am trying to help you improve. And when you correct each other, you're not trying to show, oh, I am better, I can come with the correct answer. You cannot. We're not doing that either. So all my students are very comfortable being correct and correct the mistake or the error and do the right way right away.